I feel like we should have worn leotards.
Mine's in the wash. So it's been an incredible weekend, and Mr. Wainwright, thank you so much for being here. And I want to start by mentioning a song of yours that we had in rotation when I was at the student radio station at the University of Northern Iowa. This was almost 30 years ago now. It is not one of your more well-known songs. It was called "I Wish I Was a Lesbian." Yeah. And and if you pay even a little bit of attention to the lyrics, which we did not at the time, the song is clearly from the point of view of a narrator who is describing a conversation he had with his partner. She is the one who wishes she was a lesbian. This went over our heads at the time because we were idiots. We were dumb college kids. But it does kind of make me want to ask, how often, is that an example of a song where you are in a character, or what's the perspective of that song?
Boy, it's so long ago, but it was a big, people in Northampton, Massachusetts loved it. And other places, but particularly at that time, as I recall. Yeah, I think it starts with a kind of joke where I say, my girlfriend says, I wish I was a lesbian, and then I counter with, you mean you wish you were? That's the intro, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I had forgotten about that part, but yeah, that's how it goes.
These things, you write them and you sing them, and I have not sung that song probably in 10 or 15 years. In fact, if I had to sing it, I probably wouldn't be able to remember the words. But I was happy that it had an impact all those many years ago, in Northampton anyway.
What was it about Northampton? Do you remember?
No, it just was happening right there at that time. He's never been to Northampton.
I haven't, no.
They'll tell you later.
Okay, I'll find somebody. What inspires a song like that?
Well, it's anything can, in my case, at any rate. I'm not one of those people that gets up at, and has coffee and sharpens pencils and tries to write songs for other people to sing, or even for myself to sing. I just kind of, in the back of my mind, and sometimes it moves over to the front of my mind, and I remember that I'm a singer-songwriter, and that my job is to come up with these songs. So if I have something happens to me, or I hear a sentence, or I observe something on the street, or if I'm enveloped in some intense emotional situation with a family member or a loved one, or a politician that I despise, whatever it is, then I'm kind of spurred to write something down, and then maybe pick up the guitar and try to turn it into a song. But although the one exception is I have learned that I can write to order. That is to say, I wrote, I like that.
Oh, my bad.
Okay.
All right.
I've written, NPR. I wrote songs for Morning Edition and All Things Considered, and they would say, we need a song about O.J. Simpson, in 3 days. And then I found out that I could actually, sit down and get the work done. But most of the time, I'm pretty blasé and just write when I'm worried I'm not writing or want to.
Hearing you talk about how inspiration can come from anywhere makes me think of another one of your songs that had on my list, Dead Skunk, which is literally about a time you ran over a dead skunk, and you wrote a song about it in like 10 minutes.
12.
12 minutes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a good example. It's just something silly happened, and the chorus, if you don't remember it, some of you might, and others have probably never even heard it, is dead skunk in the middle of the road, dead skunk in the middle of the road, dead skunk in the middle of the road, stinking to high heaven. And it's probably going to be in the first sentence of my obituary, the dead skunk thing. It was a big song on the radio in 1972 or 3, particularly in Little Rock, Arkansas, where it was #1 for 6 consecutive weeks.
We had a talk yesterday about songwriting and how songs can come to mean different things to different people over the years. Has anybody ever come to you with a interpretation of Dead Skunk that you were just kind of like, I don't know where you got that, but okay?
Well, actually, yes. What comes to mind is, again, this was 1972 or 3. So, and it was, people heard it all the time. So some guy, I don't know if it was a journalist or just a person, but he said, so that Dead Skunk song, that's about Richard Nixon, isn't it? And my answer was, whatever, if you think so. But all it was, my dad was a journalist. He wrote for Life magazine, and one of the things a journalist has to be able to do is observe and details, descriptions of a photograph or of an event or a person's reaction. So I think that's something that I might have inherited from my father, this kind of reporting on things in a descriptive way. Often the songs are just, I'm describing something.
Mm-hmm. Your songs are very autobiographical, and they're full of a lot of very vivid details, which I think makes them more relatable. Does that make sense?
It does to me, because what happens to me, if I'm writing about my difficult relationship with my father, or my love of my kid, or my difficult relationship with my kid, or whatever, I know, and not in the back of my mind, I know clearly in the front of my mind that it's happened to you, the listener. Nothing is I'm not writing about anything unusual, really. It's all presumably relatable. So I know that, and so people say, God, those songs are so personal, and it doesn't strike me as that they are. Again, they're just really descriptive, and I have a confessional streak. That's true. I for some reason, I suppose you could say, expose myself in the songs, and that's a way to get stuff out, and also to create a dramatic effect, I think.
Have you ever thought maybe I'm confessing too much here, or?
Yeah, there have been a couple of tough Thanksgiving dinners. I have 4 kids, and 3 of them are singer-songwriters, and good ones. And, Rufus and Martha and my daughter Lucy, particularly Rufus and Martha, have written a lot of songs about me too. So it gets to be like the battle of the bands a little bit, but it's just it is a kind of. Lucy doesn't do it as much as the others, but that's probably because I had a better relationship with her mother than with Rufus and Martha's mom. Oh, it's so fraught.
I've been listening to the song Daughter quite a bit lately. I have a 14-year-old daughter at home. There's one line that I find the whole song hits me here every time until we get to everything I say she takes to heart. We are not there yet. in my house.
Yeah. Well, Daughter is a song that a lot of people like. It was in a movie, a Judd Apatow movie called Knocked Up, so a lot of people heard it. But I have to say to you, and to you also, I did not write that song.
Okay.
I wish I had. I sang it and recorded it, but Daughter was written by a great songwriter, American guy who's been living in London for 40 years called Peter Blegvad. So he deserves the credit for Daughter.
Well, I apologize for that. We will move on to Gray in L.A.
I wrote that.
Yeah. Okay. This is a little where this was, I think 2000, 2007 in there.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's on the same record as the Daughter was. Yeah.
There's some lyrics in there about wildfires and our cars are burning the planet that they hit a little harder now than they probably did then, and still hit pretty hard then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are, I suppose now in particular, there are ecological overtones. I mean, at the time, the song was about trying to make it in Los Angeles as an actor. I studied to be an actor. I thought that's what I was going to do. And occasionally I do get an acting job, but it's about the horror and humiliation and nightmare of being an actor. That's what Gray in L.A. is really about.
It struck me as like a love letter, but kind of tough love to the city of L.A.
Yeah. It's tough hate to the city of LA.
Tough hate, okay.
I love the place if you're employed. I mean, again, if you have a job, it's great. But I actually say in the song that it's a cruel town. It's crueler than New York, I think. And I've spent lots of years in New York. It's a tough town, LA.
You said earlier you don't ever songwriting is not part of your daily routine. You just kind of, do you wait for inspiration, or do you just, again, with the Dead Skunk or anything else, do you just say, oh, that's a song, that can be a song?
Yeah, I mean, it can happen that way, where I'll see something or hear something, or I'll start to worry that I'm not writing, or occasionally somebody will say, we need a song about such and such. So it can start on a couple of ways.
What's it like being on a deadline like that? Like when Morning Edition says we need a song in 3 days?
Well, again, my father had to write to deadline. He wrote at Life magazine, and they had to close the magazine on Fridays. So I guess maybe I inherited that also from him. I started doing that. I had a job, and I guess it was an acting job, in the television show MASH. I was I think it was the 3rd season of MASH. And my character was called Captain Calvin Spaulding, the singing surgeon. So I was a doctor, but I also had a guitar, and I wrote songs. And one of the episodes was Douglas MacArthur was coming to see the MASH, or to visit the MASH unit. And they say, we need a song this afternoon about Douglas MacArthur. So they actually gave me an envelope full of biographical material. I knew nothing really about MacArthur. So I had to come out of there with a song. So again, I found that I could write to deadline.
I think I've seen that episode. And if I remember correctly, it ends with the Jeep with MacArthur in it driving right past the camp, and it doesn't even stop.
No, it doesn't. That's the whole setup. He doesn't even get out of the Jeep.
You mentioned an acting career. I actually also, you were on another, I think it was another Judd Apatow production. You were a regular on the show Undeclared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played a character called Hal, who was a dysfunctional father, so it was a big stretch for me. But I mean, the character was, his son goes to college, and the father goes to college with him. Moves into an apartment in the same town. It's that kind of level neurotic, paternal, whatever.
So when you were talking about, you thought you were going to be an actor, and here you are, now you're a regular on a TV show well into your music career. What was that like?
Well, it was fun. Acting is, I always wanted, I wanted to be a performer. I since I was a very little kid, just singing for my mother and her twin sister, an old folk song I learned at camp. When I got the delight that they were experiencing from my performing, that's kind of when it sewed it up for me. So acting is, and I became a singer and a songwriter, but it's all performing, although it's a different kind of thing. Acting is much more collaborative, and you're doing a script, and there's other actors and a director, whereas the singing thing is more of a one-man operation.
I feel like it's probably a lot more common thing than most of us realize. Like, you'll hear about an actor who is putting out a record, and maybe we'll kind of make some snarky comments about it, but that person has probably been making music as long as they've been acting, and it's just one panned out and the other didn't.
Yeah. No, Kevin Bacon, I think, sings with his brother, and Jeff Daniels, I think, writes songs, and Johnny Depp, I think, wants to be a singer-songwriter. He can try.
Yeah.
It's harder than selling men's cologne, though, Johnny.
Yeah, you bring it back to another song from earlier in your career, "Talking New Bob Dylan."
Yeah.
Which is sung to Bob Dylan. I think in the song you are talking about you have been anointed as one of these new Bob Dylans, along with John Prine, and Steve Forbert is in here, Bruce Springsteen. How did you feel about that? Did that bother you in a way, or did you see it as a compliment?
Well, that was one of the songs that NPR asked me to write about. Bob Dylan had just turned 50, so it's like a long time ago. And they said, "Can you write us a Bob Dylan song?" So when I started my career in the early 70s, somebody in some newspaper said, "He's the new Bob Dylan," which was ridiculous. I mean, because I don't really sound anything like Bob Dylan, and the things that I'm writing about are not the things really that he writes about. But I played the guitar, and I was good.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. But, and as you say, there was kind of a new Bob Dylan club, Steve Forbert, Prine, and Bruce, of course. Of all the new Bob Dylans, he has the biggest house. Sometimes we go there for our 12-step meetings, new Bob Dylan anonymous meetings.
Oh, perfect.
But if the New York Times or the Village Voice, I can't remember which newspaper it was, says this is the new Bob Dylan, or this is the Charlie Chaplin of rock, or whatever, it helps if it's in the newspaper, and it helped me get a record deal. Okay. So it was useful, but it got to be a pain in the ass, actually.
Yeah.
I met Bob Dylan twice, and the first time I was just shaking. I was so nervous about meeting him, and he didn't say anything really. And then a few years later, he came to see me playing at a kind of legendary club in New York called Max's Kansas City. And he came up to the dressing room to say hello. And he did say hello, and then he also said, "Man, I really like that Dead Skunk song." So, he knew.
We've talked a little bit about how all of your songs are autobiographical, and how sometimes maybe over-confessing a little bit, but in the song In C, you're saying, "With my favorite protagonist, me." And does that get hard after a while? Just
You mean writing about myself all the time?
Do you ever run out of material?
No, it's endless. It never seems to end. I mean, you know, in the first song on my first record, which was I made in 1969, was "In Delaware When I Was Younger." That was the first line. It's a song about a boarding school that I went to in Middletown, Delaware. You've seen it in the movies. It was the campus that they shot the Dead Poets Society on. So, and now I'm writing about, going to the doctor and my medications and being a grandfather and death. Great topic. Talk about relatable too.
Yeah.
Everybody's thinking about it every day. Except for this young man here with his arms crossed. He doesn't even know what I'm talking about. You're going to find out! This is so, yeah.
So when it comes to an uncomfortable topic like that, you're also known for your sense of humor in your music. I find your songs very funny. Is that hard? Is it hard to be funny in a song without it turning into shtick or just getting
sometimes
corny?
it can turn into shtick, and that's okay. I mean, I was very, aside from being like most singer-songwriters, being incredibly influenced by Bob Dylan, certainly, and Pete Seeger, and Woody Guthrie, and then all those great Broadway writers like Frank Lesser. And I loved, as a kid, I loved listening to comedy records. Shelley Berman and Lenny Bruce and Jonathan Winters. I mean, again, I don't know. Some of you know who I'm talking about. One of my greatest heroes, and who was a huge influence on me, was Tom Lehrer, who recently passed away. My dad had those Tom Lehrer records, those 10-inch discs. The songs were so funny and so well observed, and he also could really sing and play well too. I actually got to meet Tom Lehrer. I went to visit him in Cambridge recently. I had an email relationship with him. We wrote occasionally, but it was 97 at the time. So at some point I said, "Well, what's it like to be 97? I mean, and he kind of took a beat and said, "The great thing about getting this old is less peer pressure." And yeah, I can sing you a Tom Lehrer song. Would you like to hear that? Normally I would play it on the ukulele, but there once was a man named Oedipus. No, it starts with from the Bible to the popular song. There's one theme that we find all along. Of all ideals we hail as good, the most sublime is motherhood. There was a man, though, who it seems once carried this ideal to extremes. He loved his mother and she loved him, and yet his story is rather grim. There once was a man named Oedipus Rex. You may have heard about his odd complex. His name appears in Freud's index, 'cause he loved his mother. His rivals used to say quite a bit, as a monarch he was most unfit. Still in all, they had to admit that he loved his mother. He loved his mother like no other. His daughter was his sister, his son was his brother. One thing on which you can depend is he sure knew who a boy's best friend is. And when he found out what he had done, he tore his eyes out one by one. A tragic end to a loyal son who loved his mother. So be sweet and kind to mother now and then, have a chat. Buy her flowers or some candies or a brand new hat. Maybe you had better let it go at that. Or you might find yourself with a complex. You may end up like Oedipus. I'd rather marry a duck-billed platypus than end up like old Oedipus Rex. Tom Lehrer.
So I was going to ask about guitar playing. Who inspires you as
Who needs a guitar? No, ask me about guitar playing. Guitar playing is really important.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Who inspires you as a guitar player?
Well, he still inspires me. He's another fella that's up in his 90s. He's still alive. He, I mentioned Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan. In between those two is a guy called Ramblin' Jack Elliott. Some of you may know who that is. A great guitar player. And when I went to that boarding school I mentioned, I had a Spanish teacher, a guy called Peter Madison, and he taught me to play like Jack. I'm not a flashy guitar player. I don't play lead guitar, but I have a really steady right hand, and it's from Jack Elliott, and he's happily still with us.
Are there any current singers, songwriters who inspire you, who you're into?
I hate all of them.
Yeah.
That is to say, I'm jealous of all of them. You hear things. I'm not one of those people. When I started trying to write my own songs, I had been influenced by Bob Dylan, by Tom Lehrer, by Frank Lesser. But when I started to write in earnest, I stopped listening to other songwriters as a kind of discipline to see if I could create my own thing. I mean, and you can hear the influences, but I made a point of doing that. So I still don't really have my finger on the pulse of what's happening now. I mean, but I hear things. I mean, last night I was sitting in the car. I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was listening to Willie's Roadhouse, which has great songs. And they had a thing from the Opry. It was Saturday night at the Opry or Friday night at the Opry. And there was some group called Old Dominion. And I'd never heard of them. And this guy, I don't even know his name, but he wrote this great song about how he didn't want to be a one-man band. Mm-hmm. So, they're out there. Yeah. I hate them, but they're out there.
So what does it take to catch your ear then? What is it about this Old Dominion that...
It was just such a well-crafted, it was poetic too. Mm-hmm. It was, I was moved by it. So we're back to that thing we were talking about of finding something that that the listener can relate to. And it was just very well done and presented nicely. Yeah.
Do you always have the listener in mind when you're writing, or do you occasionally just write something for yourself and...
Well, there are songs that I write and then I throw away, I don't use, because I realize they won't work for the listener. Or I'll take them out and perform them and learn that it's not really happening. But, I'm always thinking about trying to write. That again, that's my job, so I have to. It's in mind. I keep it in mind.
Have any of your songs do they mean different things to you now than maybe when they were first released many years ago?
Different things. Well, I've written a lot of songs. I've been writing songs for 50 years. Some of my songs I don't perform, I don't remember, I wouldn't, you know, at some points in the shows, people will yell out for songs, and I won't do it because I don't remember it or I don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. But you know, there are a couple of my songs that are on my first record that I still feel I can relate to them, mm-hmm. So I use them in the show. They're just songs that have lasted for me. And some other people, the audience people.
Mm-hmm. I think we want to take a few minutes to take questions from our scholars and some folks in the audience. Do you mind if we take a few seconds to do that?
Fine.
Great. Yeah, back here.
Maybe 10, 12 years ago, you did a project that was inspired by Charlie Poole, And if I remember correctly, you sang some Charlie Poole songs, but then you made up some songs like based on Charlie Poole's life. Can you talk a little? I thought that was a kind of ingenious prompt for writing. Can you talk a little bit about that project and maybe about Charlie Poole and why you love it?
Charlie Poole he performed in the 1920s. He was from North Carolina, a place called Spray, in the north central part of North Carolina. It turns out I was also born in Chapel Hill when my dad was at college there. But I heard his records, and he was a banjo player, and I play a little bit of banjo, and he did not write his own songs, but he sang the songs. He sang church songs and novelty songs and love songs and travel songs and mother songs. And this would have been with his band, the North Carolina Ramblers. And he made some records which I loved and heard for the first time in the 1970s. Years later, a guy that I work with quite frequently, a guy called Dick Cannett, has his own label. And I was talking about how much I loved Charlie Poole. And he said, well, let's do a Charlie Poole project. So we recorded with some great musicians. All my kids are on the records. Chris Thiele is on the record of the Punch Brothers. A lot of really, really great players. And we recorded songs that Charlie did. And then I also wrote, Dick and I wrote 9 other songs. It's a double album, actually. It's quite a big project. But it's called High, Wide, and Handsome, the Charlie Poole Project. And it won a Grammy. So that was a big thing for us. Thank you. Yeah, it was. I got an opportunity to get out of being Loudon Wainwright III, who writes about his kids and father, and I got to it was a stretch for me to be just mostly a singer, and also to try to inhabit his life by writing songs about him. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Wainwright. I was curious. You were talking about your kids being songwriters. You're kind of getting to that with your previous response, like kind of a theme with similar to that. But how do you feel as a father, your kids using that practice to serve them, but also kind of following in your footsteps, and then they're kind of holding their own in that space you're kind of talking about that interactive space with their songs and your songs, and I don't know, but I'm just kind of wondering how you feel about all that, and if you recommend it to younger people as a practice,
Well, I've always, starting with that, I've always felt that entertaining or songwriting or certainly writing anything or painting anything or making a movie or writing a play or writing a poem, it's very honorable, important work. So I would encourage anybody to take a shot at that stuff. In the case of my, as I said, I have 4 kids. One of them is not a musician. She's a brilliant writer. Her name is Alexandra. but there were just too many musicians, so she didn't want to do that. But in Rufus and Martha, my two older kids, their mother was the great singer-songwriter, musician Kate McGarrigle of Kate and Anna McGarrigle fame. And so they were very influenced by her. And then my daughter Lucy, her mom is Suzy Roach from the Roaches. So you have a lot of genetic stuff happening. The moms are this good stock, as it were. All I did was sleep with them. Occasionally.
I see one over here. Okay.
I guess we've scared everybody off.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right here.
Have you ever experienced writer's block or taken a long break from songwriting?
That's a great question. I was saying how kind of nonchalant I am about I don't write every day and everything. But if months go by and I haven't written a song, I start to get a little nervous and need to nudge myself. Often I'll write some bad songs just to kind of get the muscle going again. Now, the one time where I really stopped, when my mother died in 1997, and I fell apart. I could hardly do anything. I lost 20 pounds, and I couldn't sleep, and I fell apart. So the idea of picking up the guitar, it just was impossible. And that lasted about 6 or 7 months, and then I wrote a song. The name of the song is "I'm Not Gonna Cry." And then I wrote a whole slew of songs, a lot of which had to do with that thing. A song called "Homeless," which was about her dying, and another song called "White Winos," which was about her and I drinking together. But that was the longest I'd ever gone without writing a song. I was just knocked over by that event. Yeah.
Are there any covers of your songs that you really like? Thinking of Big Star Motel Blues or
Yeah.
songs?
That's a good one. Alex Chilton, who was the leader of Big Star, recorded a good live version of Motel Blues. I've been very, the most, if you're a songwriter, the most exciting thing is if somebody thinks your song is good enough to record it or perform it. Johnny Cash recorded a song of mine called "The Man Who Couldn't Cry." Mose Allison, another hero of mine, recorded a song called "I'm All Right." Earl Scruggs, the world's greatest banjo player, recorded the swimming song twice. So those were kind of, my son Rufus recorded one of my songs and does a beautiful version of a song of mine called "One Man Guy." So those are the kind of highlights of people who, the McGarrigles, Kate and Anna McGarrigle, also covered the swimming song, and the Roaches recorded a song of mine called "The Golfin' Blues." So yeah.
I heard Tommy Stinson do a version of "One Man Guy" once. He was sitting on top of the bar playing a solo acoustic, did "One Man Guy." It was
Really?
pretty incredible. Yeah.
Wow, Tommy Stinson?
Yeah. Yeah, brother of bass player for the Replacements, brother of Bob.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, he owes me some money, I think.
If I see him again, I'll let you know.
Write that down, Tommy.
Fine. Okay, sounds like we have time for a couple more. Maybe one or two more questions.
I'll tell you another thing about songwriting. There was a group there was a singer in the 50s, some of you may remember, Johnny Maestro and the Brooklyn Bridge. They had radios on. They had songs on the AM radio. And at the beginning of my career, again, when I was being touted as the new Bob Dylan and the next guy, Johnny Maestro recorded on an album called The Bridge in Blue. He recorded 5 of my songs on that album, all from my first album. And I didn't like one version of any of them. And I remember going to a recording studio, and somebody had said, he wants to meet you. So I kind of went, and I was wearing sunglasses, and and I just kind of went, oh, that's great, man. I did a kind of a Bob Dylan impression. But that was a time where I appreciated his interest, but I didn't like any of the cover versions.
Yeah.
Maybe just talk a little bit about the project that you did a couple of years ago with quotes from your dad's writings,
Oh, yeah.
and whether those quotes were directly the inspiration for the songs or how you integrated.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't quotes, actually. I mentioned that my dad was a journalist. He wrote for Life magazine, and he had a column in the magazine called The View from Here. And he wrote 800, 1,200 word pieces that appeared in the magazine throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. So because I had been interested in being an actor and like it when I can be theatrical, I thought, why not take my father died in 1988, but this was, 15 or 17 years ago. I thought, I'll take my dad's writing, these columns and pieces of them, and in some cases the entire columns, and I'll connect them with my songs. So I saw it as a kind of posthumous collaboration between the two of us. And that's what I did. I learned word for word I spent a lot of time learning the column about having to put the dog down, or the column about him buying a suit in England and having it tailored. The name of the show was called Surviving Twin. You can actually see it. It's on Netflix. And so if you, Judd Apatow produced it, who also, we talked about Undeclared. And the guy who directed it was Christopher Guest, the filmmaker who has been a friend of mine for almost 60 years. So, but that was the thing with my dad's work. And again, we didn't get along great, but it was a wonderful thing to perform every night his work, which was great. I mean, he was a great writer. His best stuff was as good as anybody's.
I think we can do one more.
Real quick one.
Yeah.
Were you ever a sideman before you came out?
You mean as a player?
Yeah, you said you had a really good right hand.
Well, I've sung backup on other people's records. I've never really been hired as a guitar player. I've been hired as a singer. I've done. I also made a record of singing standards called "I'd Rather Lead a Band," which came out a couple of years ago, where I just was a singer, singing Cole Porter songs and stuff like that. But I've never been hired as a guitar player. There's still time, maybe.
I want to thank you so much for taking some time this afternoon to share these stories and your wisdom and insight. It's been a delight. And thank you so much. Thanks to you for being here and being such a great audience.
Thank you very much, Tony. I
Thank
enjoyed
you, Loudon Wainwright.